It is very rare that we talk about a controller because they're kind of all the same. And this is the first one in a long time that has a feature that I have not seen before. Oh, it is the Turtle Beach Stealth Pivot. And let me show you what that means. Pivot, it's a different controller. Yes, this controller's gimmick is that there is 2 sets of buttons and analog sticks that you can rotate between depending on the genre of game you're playing. And what I've generally found is that gimmicks suck. When you do a weird, unique thing, it's rare that that is done well, at least the first time. And so I've been excited to look at this and dreading it a little bit because Turtle Beach doesn't necessarily have the best reputation. They're kind of the cheap headset maker for Xboxes and PS5s. However, first impression, this is a nice controller, holy crap. It is chunky. The shape of the body is very thick because it has to be able to fit, you know, the pivoting modules. The plastics feel premium, although I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the kind of extreme gamer accents. I think it's makes sense when you're selling a premium controller, but I prefer just simple quality plastics that are uniform so that the hand kind of just feels normal everywhere. In its default configuration, it's very much like an Xbox controller, 2 analog sticks that are Hall Effect, which is very nice if you don't know what that is. Instead of using potentiometers that rub against each other and wear down and cause stick drift long term, Hall Effect used magnets to detect its position and a spring to recenter the stick. And so theoretically, it shouldn't drift long term, although the springs can have their own set of issues. But generally speaking, you want Hall Effect. You have your D-pad, which is fine. It's adequate for the kind of game you would play with a joystick next to it. Face buttons that are very traditional membrane feeling. On the front, we have where our screen will be. If you've ever looked down at your controller and wished you had a screen, this is the controller for you. You, the 3 people that have thought that. We have our start select. I don't care what they call them now. They're still start and select to me. Down here we have our input focus button. I'm not sure what that does, but we will discover it when we play with the software. In the middle here we have our quick slide dial that you can assign to different functions like changing your volume to chat mix or just changing your volume and whatnot. Here that looks like a share button. So pretty standard configuration other than the screen and the quick slide button on the front. On the top we have shoulder button triggers, but we also have these trigger stops, which is actually a pretty killer feature if you're someone who plays competitive games. Basically what that does, when it's not activated, you have a full trigger travel all the way down. And when you activate it, it's a much shorter travel. So in a game where you're constantly pulling the trigger and you wanna have the fastest reaction time possible, you don't have to travel quite as far. I like actually having my aim down button be the full travel and then the trigger button just being a little clicky click. On the back we have programmable buttons, one on each side, as well as our locks for the pivot modules. You'll notice when you want to pivot it, you actually have to twist these down. I don't love the way that you have to rotate the sticks every time you want to pivot it. It feels like that's gonna be a point of failure long term for the controller. I might be wrong, but where everything else is rated in millions of clicks and presses, I expect that to be a much lower number for the amount of times you can twist that stick before it starts to do some wonky things. In terms of general button feel, it feels pretty nice. The sticks have a decent amount of resistance to them. They're not the kind of really cheap light controller, although I've definitely felt heavier sticks. D-pad feels okay. Face buttons feel pretty nice. All the little buttons feel fine. The bumpers feel like a very small amount of rubber kind of going in. It feels small and precise and clicky in a way that's good, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as I felt on other controllers. Definitely not bad. That kind of differentiation will definitely be a preference thing. The triggers are quite nice. At full travel, it doesn't feel like they go very far, but with the hair stop triggers, it actually doesn't feel that different. They definitely feel quality and the shape of them is quite nice. I like the texture on it too. Overall, yeah, quite a premium controller. Definitely for chonky hands. Oh, I missed something. Look, a headphone jack. Big fan of headphone jacks on controllers. When I play on a PC, I'm often playing with the wired headphones and having the ability to be further away from my desk but still use my wired headphones, big plus. But that's all the buttons on the regular configuration side. Let's see how it feels on this side. Buttons feel exactly the same. They feel like the resistance is a little bit different. Like the A button feels like it's harder to press than whatever this customizable button is. This D-pad, way better on this side. It makes sense on this side that it's kind of a more premium D-pad as it's a primary input method. It's one of those old Sega feeling ones where it's a big disc instead of the plus sign. It feels very precise, very clicky. You can even probably hear it. The flipping feels pretty good. You can definitely over rotate it, which is a little bit worrisome for the reliability. I think it's something you're gonna wanna be careful on. But there's kind of a satisfying click when it lands in its correct spot. I'm trying to see if there's any give even when it's locked. I don't know if you can see it, but the whole module is moving a little bit when I press the D-pad. Not ideal, and it doesn't feel like the whole thing's a big mushy mess. It's definitely the kind of compromise you have to make for a gimmick of this sort. Overall, quite premium feeling buttons, and I'm quite satisfied, and I would be pretty happy to play on this. In your box, you'll also have a USB cable. On the box, it says 3 meters. On the website, it says 2.5 meters. We seem to have lost ours in the bustle of the LTT video that this is gonna be in. So you keep be on the lookout for that. You also get your dongle, which is my preferred way to play. Pretty simple. This one has a pairing button, which is interesting. Not much left to do, but plug this thing and test it out for ourselves. But first, let me tell you about our sponsor.
Thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Take to the skies, strike from the sea, and dominate on land with thousands of vehicles, each modeled accurately from their real-life counterparts. You'll be immersed in the action thanks to authentic sound effects, in-depth customization options, and realistic damage modeling. And the best part, on top of their PC and console versions, they have an all-new mobile app for iOS and Android, so you can take to the battlefield wherever you might be. Join over 70 million players and revel in the destruction. Use our link in the description to get a welcome bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles.
One thing I didn't point out is that it is USB Type-C, which is nice, very standard these days, but people seem to still find ways to mess things up, so. You can also see that you can charge and play it at the same time, something you'd think is common, but it is not universal. The sticks seem to be pretty good. Let's test the circularity. About 13% circle error on the sticks. That's not horrible out of the box, that's not ideal, but you can calibrate it using this nifty screen. So let's dive into the features of this screen. First screen, you get kind of an overview of your settings. You can create your profiles. We can configure our 4 buttons, either our back buttons or the blue buttons that were in the top right corner. I'm more interested in these back paddles. Realistically, what I wanna do is have this be the left and right clicks. I find that's a good thing for it. So it's a little bit confusing because this isn't mirrored. Just think about it for a second, you'll get there. I believe in you. Okay, we can change our slider. Right now it's volume, but we could change our mic monitor up, down, our mic mute, game chat, and our EQ. I'm gonna leave it at volume. One thing that I would improve in the next version of the software is when I press stuff, it would show me what I'm pressing on screen just so that I can be fully aware of the stuff that's happening. That's nice, you can reassign one of the analog sticks to the D-pad. So if you're playing a retro style game that doesn't have D-pad support for some reason, you could actually force the game to use your D-pad for that. That's actually quite nice. Sticks! Left stick, dead zone, get out of here. Pfft. I don't buy Hall Effect sticks to have freaking dead zone. What the heck is this? Oh yeah, so you can see the shape of the circle. I'm all the way to the edge of the circle of the analog stick, and it doesn't follow the circle perfectly. It goes beyond the bounds of the circle. So it shows you that's where the circularity is. That's the kind of error that you're not really gonna notice, especially because it's pretty symmetrical across the whole controller spectrum. We have trigger dead zones now, that's nice. Again, that's not really what I'm doing here. If I was playing like a racing sim, maybe I'd want to like only have the pedal activate once I'm a little bit in. It's definitely a preference thing. There's actually some games that don't have dead zones built into their interpretation of X input, and sometimes it feels weird. And so having the option to add dead zone, not a bad thing. What the f is superhuman hearing? We have different EQs, signature sound, which I'm guessing is probably just like a little bit of a bass boost. There's a big bass boost, there's a bass and treble boost, so probably just a V shape where you lose the mids, and a voice boost, which is probably the opposite, the mids being boosted a little bit. It is nice to know that they put a little bit of effort into the audio coming out of a controller. I've put headphones into controllers that have the worst DAC I've ever heard in the entire world, and I imagine this one won't be the worst. And then we have RGB. This is the smallest amount of RGB. I didn't even notice this RGB, which is probably a good thing. If you don't like the sensation of the vibration, you can control it pretty granularly. Okay, we can calibrate our controller. That's quite nice. Is it actually calibrating or is it just testing it? It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Okay, yeah, that's adequate software. It doesn't do anything unexpected, but it does what I need it to do, other than control this light, which is weird. There's another feature that we're trying to get working, but seems to be having a little bit of issue with the software, and that is a Pro Aim mode where you toggle it and it changes the sensitivity so you can snipe better. I don't think that that's really an important feature for people. I feel like that's one of those check the box as a feature sort of things, but if you're someone that does like switching sensitivities for your sticks mid-game, let me know. I do that for my my mice sometimes, so maybe you're doing it for your controllers. Let's play a game! The vibration is bad. I don't like the vibration of this controller at all. It feels and sounds weird. It's like a wimpy, meh. That's a very precise stick. I can feel it's very responsive. Now that I've turned off the dead zone on the in the game, these feel very good. I'm gonna be very bad because I don't play many shooters with a controller, but the issues are not with the controller, they're with me. I can tell you right now, this feels like a very good controller. I'm gonna set the hair trigger. You lose a little bit of immersion, especially on something like the bow check, which is a bow and has like a big pull. I don't think there is vibration in the triggers. There's not. It's certainly not resistive or adaptive like the PS5 ones where they push back against you depending on the game, even though this game does support that. And there's no vibration, which is a feature not everyone cares about. I've kind of come to love it. This is a pretty solid controller. It is kind of gimmicky, but it feels very premium, and I've kind of forgotten that there even is another side. These triggers feel good, the sticks feel good. Let's go into a game where we're gonna test out the D-pad and the face buttons a little bit more. Oh yeah, I forgot that there's a screen on this thing. You hit the quick start button and then you can go through your social alerts. I'm guessing you connect that to Discord and it'll pop up there. That, not a cool feature. Like, it's one of those things where they're like, we need to add more to this controller to justify its price. I don't think I care about my controller having the latest messages for me. That's what my second monitor is for. And if you're buying this and don't have a second monitor, that's a weird way to spend your money, to be honest. It's not a cheap controller, but we'll get to that. D-pad mapping, slider mapping. So you can do the stuff that you're doing in the software in-game. If you lose connection, you can reconnect using that. All right, time to test the other side. Yo, this D-pad is fire though. I haven't played on a controller where I thought the D-pad was better than adequate in a long time. I really like this side's D-pad. The other side is as mid as everything else. Really precise, really clear what I'm pressing. It doesn't feel like there's gonna be accidental presses. We're here in Street Fighter 6. Yeah, it's really easy with this D-pad to know exactly what I'm pressing. It's very clicky, very tactile. Although this is clearly not the esports way to play a fighting game, this is a pretty dang good way, especially because in just a couple seconds, you're back to the traditional way. It feels a little bit cheap to me that they have a really good controller on one side and kind of a mid one on this side. I can't imagine it's that expensive to manufacture that D-pad, but I guess every penny counts. Turtle Beach. If you're playing wirelessly, they claim you get about 20 hours of battery, which is great. Someone who plays on a PS5, I'm used to like 3 on a good day. And so 20 is a pretty acceptable amount. Just charge it every couple play sessions. We haven't talked about the different connectivity modes. There's obviously wireless, either over dongle or Bluetooth. You can do wired, and you need to do wired if you're doing it on an Xbox, which is a bit of a shame. You can use it with Android, so you can actually use it with a TV, which is interesting as more and more game streaming services are offering TV apps. Like I noticed at the Game Awards yesterday, Microsoft is pivoting what Xbox branding means. Like their whole new thing is that, your phone is an Xbox, your TV is an Xbox because it can stream Game Pass. And so this will work with that. And this would be a great controller for that. I think overall, this is quite a nice controller, especially for something that's so gimmicky. I'm quite impressed with how it feels and how it plays. And I have no real complaints except the price. This controller costs $130. It's not the most you can spend on a controller, but it's far from the least. And in an era where there is really good $30 controllers, it can be a little bit hard to justify spending $130 on a controller that is very good, but I don't think is better than 2 separate controllers that does what this does. When you compare it to the elites of the world, this is actually a $50 savings, and I think this is way better than an Xbox Elite controller. And the fact that it's Hall Effect sticks means that they should last you longer. But there's a bunch of controller brands out there that you may not have heard of that make really freaking good controllers. And we're doing some kind of roundup on LTT that you'll wanna keep your eye out for. And it might not have all of the features, but if you're looking for just like a no-nonsense controller, there's other options. But if you're someone who wants one controller that can do it all, this is really good. And it is not really compromising in any meaningful way. And I feel like I can recommend this controller without any real hesitation. You look at the price, if that's in your range, this is a pretty sweet candidate. Just like you're a pretty sweet candidate for watching this video. Thanks for watching Short Circuit. If you like this video, why don't you check out another one where I do something.